The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Chris McIntosh, who's a fantastic global macro investor, someone who's neck deep in the commodity space. And that's one thing that he's looked into moving forward is which countries are going to most likely push back against maybe a World Economic Forum and a Great Reset agenda, therefore might have more inflows of capital for people who believe in free market capitalism. And he has pinpointed Russia as potentially one of those countries, along with the UAE and maybe Brazil. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what I found, and this will make me extremely unpopular with your listeners, but I found that political risk is a matter of perception.
Yeah.
And people who look like you and I often believe that money that's stolen from us by white people in English through the legislature, according to the rule of law, is somehow less gone than money that's taken from us by more traditional methods. I experienced my worst personal experience with political risk in the People's Republic of California, where we made a gold discovery, unfortunately, 7 miles on the wrong side of the California-Nevada line. It took us 13 years to obtain permits for a deposit that was easily permittable under current legislation. And by the way, it cost us $16 million in bribes. Not efficient bribes like you would pay in Congo, but rather campaign contributions, deeds in lieu, things like that. So think about cash flow denied for 13 years, particularly at a time when the US 10-year Treasury was at 6 or 7%. And people tell me that California isn't risky. More recently, I owned and have for years a condominium in Vancouver, British Columbia, as a consequence of, a lot of investments in Canada. The voters of Vancouver and British Columbia, in their wisdom, I guess decided that I was deleterious to their economy because I was a foreigner and I didn't live there full time. They decided to tax me 5% of the assessed value of my home in Vancouver on top of the existing 60 basis point property taxes that they all paid. 5% of the assessed value of my home annually.
An unrealized capital gain.
Yeah. And I'm supposed to believe, I'm supposed to believe that Canada isn't politically risky. I have invested and been, I'm not trying to say I haven't had trouble, but I've invested years ago in Syria, Sudan, Congo, Niger, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Myanmar. And I'm not trying to say that they weren't exciting times, but you need to understand the nature of political risk. And you need to understand, too, that politics can change. I invested in Congo in 1995 and was rewarded with the beginnings of an immediate civil war where 2 million people were killed. It was a scary time to be invested in the Congo. Mercifully, the copper in the Congo that we were investing in was put in place about 45 million years ago. And the copper was singularly unconcerned about a 2-year civil war. It turns out that the inert copper was substantially smarter than the people who lived on top of it. And when they got done murdering each other, enslaving each other, gang raping each other, and civility in some measure returned, the copper was still there. I'm not suggesting that people take a cynical attitude towards political risk. I'm just suggesting that when people look at political risk, they take it in context, they juxtapose it against reward, and they think about the risks that they're facing where they are. My own belief, George, and your viewers will hate me for this, is that the most dangerous government is the one that's the closest to you.
Boy, that's very profound words. Talking about risk, Rick, I want to think about China, Evergrande. We all know the story there, that real estate, potentially 30% of their GDP. And if that collapses, that's going to be a potential collapse in the demand for a lot of commodities. I think most specific would be iron ore. And I remember, and I haven't looked at it in a few months, but I remember Rio Tinto, they were paying a very good dividend and their share price really got smacked around because of the Evergrande story. Because I think maybe 40% of the revenues are iron ore. So, what do you think about iron ore and the China story, and maybe not Rio Tinto specifically, but more in general, what's going on there with that commodity, or maybe commodities more broadly speaking, if we have a crash in China?
I've been amazed by the strength of the iron price worldwide. If you have been in the iron business for as many years as I have, this seems like a long-going fiction, but it is a long-going fiction. The urbanization of emerging and frontier markets, particularly including China, of course, is the story behind iron. When you say Evergrande, Evergrande as a standalone incident isn't serious. There's about $300 billion in debt. And remember that some of the debt will be good. The shareholders likely go to shareholder heaven. And the pain associated with the creditors will not be evenly distributed. It'll be politically distributed, which means that people who are friends of the regime will do okay and other people will do less well. But a $300 billion problem in a country with $4 trillion in foreign reserves, with the trade surpluses and the fiscal surpluses that China delivers. I hate to be off color, but it's sort of a pimple on an elephant's behind.
Right.
The larger problem, however, is the opacity and the over-leveraged nature of the real estate and development business in China. If you look at Evergrande as a symptom rather than an issue, then you need to begin to become concerned. China, I would suggest, has benefited from 40 years of fairly efficient government. Going back to Deng Xiaoping saying to be rich is glorious, abandoning the madness of Mao, and beginning to trust the industriousness and tenacity of the Chinese people. That continues. Mr. Xi trusts his people less, which is to say he's tightening down, clamping down on their freedom, which almost certainly will have negative impacts on the Chinese economy. If you look a little longer term, and this may sound racist, but if you look at the success of the Chinese diaspora around the world, what you see is that you get a lot of economic bang for the buck if you allow them a little more freedom. And I don't think that there is anything in China that isn't correctable with a couple degrees more freedom. Whether or not Mr. Xi has the courage to do that is a different circumstance. It would seem that the Chinese leadership believes that 10,000 people should make all of the effective decisions for 1.4 billion people, and that doesn't reconcile itself too well with freedom. But, I've been investing in China for a very long time, and I have contacts there who are friends. And it has been pointed out to me that China still has 250 million people that they need to urbanize. So when people say, is the China story over? Not as long as there's 1.4 billion industrious, educated, aspirational people. It's like saying, is the American story over? No, there's some speed bumps out there, but the best is ahead.
Yeah, I think that's such a great perspective. And let's move focus. Let's get back to some of the panic stuff. We're talking about panic with Russia.
Yeah.
Have you been taking a look at Turkey?
Yeah, I mean, I love Turkey. I absolutely love Turkey. It is a difficult place to invest in the mining space because the best Turkish mining companies are private. We know Çelik reasonably well, and they're absolutely first-class people. And I've been wanting to invest in their business for years. And they smile and say thank you, but no thanks. And I don't know, George, I've learned in 45 years as an investor that I know a lot about and am very good at investing in natural resources. And I know a lot about, and I'm very good at investing in conventional financial services. Early in my career, I mistook my success in natural resources for genius or the ability to analyze many different industries. And I learned some painful lessons. I learned that I am no genius, that I'm in fact more experienced at certain things than other people are. So when I looked at the length and breadth of the Turkish economy, which is to say businesses in Turkey that I have no real familiarity with, I'm afraid to buy them. Similarly in Russia, when Russia really got hammered 5 years ago, I couldn't resist myself, and I bought some Sberbank, which is the largest and most diversified bank in Russia, and allegedly the one with the best ties to the Kremlin. When I made money on Sberbank, I quickly sold it because they were involved in so many businesses and they were so opaque that, not because it wasn't a good bank, but because I couldn't understand it well enough to own it, I had to sell it. I look for investments where I believe I have a knowledge advantage and I have contact advantages. So when you ask me the question about Turkey, I can't answer the question from the point of view of the country as a whole, except for the fact that I love the place. They have a well-educated young workforce. They are some of the most hospitable people on the planet. They are going through deciding what kind of future they want. And they have a very, very, very strong-willed leader who has made some insane economic decisions. But it's not as though we haven't had our own idiots from time to time, and somehow we struggled through.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's just, and the reason for the viewers who might not be following the Turkey story, because they're going through not a hyperinflation yet, but what could be considered severe inflation, and it could be an opportunity for crisis investing.
Yep, agreed.
Now, or
agreed.
Maybe in the near future.
And if they have a little bit more political turmoil, Turkey is one of the finest places in the world to travel to visit. So for a tourism opportunity, taking a gullet on the turquoise coast when all of your fellow citizens are afraid of non-existent Muslim extremists in Turkey is one of the single best uses of your tourism dollars that you can do. It's just absolutely stunning. The food is superb. The scenery is unbelievable. The hospitality is over the top. The biggest risk that you run is that locals will feed you so many dates and so much tea and so much fine food that you'll expire from diabetes or something.
Yeah, what's interesting there too, on a side note, is they've got a program where if you invest 250 grand in real estate, you can get a citizenship or a passport in 3 years. So that's something.
Right.
That's something I'm personally considering.